Best bowl game of the holiday season thus far. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Birmingham Bowl, played in, you guessed it, Birmingham, Alabama. And it was a game against the American Conference and the ACC as Wake Forest held on for the win based on a missed field goal at the gun by Memphis. Wake wins at 37-34. Dave Clawson winning his third consecutive bowl game at Wake. So we break down the game in regards to what happened, obviously, on the field, but more so a lean toward 2019. Let's see how these two football programs look toward next fall. All right, Wake came out in the opening series and just blasted their way down the field. A beautifully play-called opening drive for 75 yards in 2.5 minutes, 10 plays, 7-0. Jamie Newman, the young quarterback, working well with the rest of the offense. Jonathan Wilson, one of the better players on the Memphis defense, shaken up on the opening drive about the third or fourth play of the game. He was in and out and fairly ineffective the rest of the day. Keep in mind, two of the best players, the most dynamic players on the field or potentially on the field, Darrell Henderson, the rushing champion in the American Conference with over 1,900 yards for Memphis, and Wake Forest Greg Dortch, who's been their best wide receiver for going back as far as we can remember, both preparing for the NFL draft. Okay, Tony Pollard came back with a 43-yard touchdown run. He's been explosive for Memphis for the last few years. He's averaging 7.3 yards per carry, went for 43, 7-7 game. He didn't really need to show his quickness, elusiveness, anything else, power on this particular play. The offensive line just blew open the hole right down the middle, 43 yards. And Pollard had a big day, 17 carries for 109 yards, 7-7 game. Memphis had a 99-yard drive in this game, showcased by a tremendous catch by their leading receiver, DeMonte Coxie, between two defenders. That led to a touchdown to make it 14-7. Coxie will be back. We'll talk about these two teams for 2019 in just a second. Keep in mind, Wake Forest makes it to a bowl game under Dave Clawson, going 7-6 with the win after losing 6 scholarship players before the season ever started to injury. And then during the season, I don't know if this number is eclipsed anywhere in college football, they lost 140 starts out of their starters this season. 140 games started, lost due to injury. Okay, it looked like Memphis would get the offense rolling and the defense would chip in with some point production of its own in this game. Corliss Love forced an interception by Newman that went to Chris Claybrooks, the seldom-used defensive back for the Tigers. He returned it for the pick six, and it was 21-7 Memphis. Newman missed a wide-open receiver in Sage Surratt. That could have been a huge play in the game. He was wide open, running down the middle of the field all by himself, and Newman tried to hit him perfectly and overthrew him by a couple of yards, or considerably. And then Tony Pollard returned the kickoff for a touchdown following a Wake field goal. Wake field goal kicker, very good. He hit it on 9 straight and then a couple more during the game, so he's got a run of 12 straight by the Wake field goal kicker. But Tony Pollard on the ensuing kickoff went all the way for the touchdown to make it 28-10. So Memphis at that point in control. But that was their last touchdown for quite some time. Their last offensive touchdown was with 3.5 minutes left in the first quarter. Memphis continued to have issues along the defensive line. So they lost Wilson for much of the game. O'Brien Wilson, another player there, he went down. Emmanuel Cooper went down all along the defensive line, injured and in and out of the game. They did miss the entire game, but Memphis was beat up front, and that cost them. Wake started to get the offense cranked up, and the defense really took over after that. Touchdown drive to make it 28-17. Brady White on this particular drive at 28-17 in the second half threw a dime. It was the best pass of the day. It was a sideline route where he had to gun this thing from the right hash all the way to the left sideline and split 2 defenders, and the defenders, of course, had the angle of the ball having to travel all the way across the field, and he still threw it by him, but the wide receiver dropped the ball. And so Memphis had to give it up right there. Scotty Washington. This kid only caught 20 passes this season, only came in with 18 receptions, but he had 2 excellent catches in this game. And I am impressed by Scotty Washington every time I watch Wake play. He ripped up Texas A&M in the bowl game last year, 9 catches for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was injured this year, couldn't follow up his 45-catch season for 2017, but he'll be back next year. And then Jamie Newman on the very next play went 17 yards for a touchdown. He broke 4 tackles, and Wake was back in the game 28-24. Memphis tried a fake field goal. It was ill-advised. It really wasn't even a fake, not a fake field goal, fake punt, because they gave it away and it didn't work and it looked ugly. But it didn't cost them as the defense rose up. All right, senior Demetrius Kemp got into the throwing lane on a slant, picked off a pass for Wake. That did not lead directly to a score, but it flipped field position. The Wake punter was exceptional in this game. He pinned 2 punts at the 2 and 1 yard line. And Chuck Wade and Cade Carney on the 1 play. The ball hit at the 1, went into the end zone. Cade Carney threw it back. No, I think it was Wilson actually spiked the ball, and Carney was able to save it. And it was an exceptional punt coverage play. I like the nuances, people. Love the nuances. Wake, the Wake field goal kicker again. I failed to get his name. 49-yard field goal, 28-27. The last Memphis offensive touchdown, as we mentioned, was with 3 minutes left in the first quarter. They didn't score forever. They went 9 consecutive drives without scoring. So they had a pick in there. They had it 2 times when they were stopped on 4th down, and 6 punts. Meanwhile, they finally, after going down at 30-28, they got it going with about 3.5 minutes left when they had to score. They went 14 plays, 88 yards in the touchdown. Sam Kraft had a 25-yard reception in that one. Patrick Taylor with a touchdown, 34-30 Memphis. Wake gets the ball with $1:15 left, and Newman did a phenomenal job of running the offense and the clock. He found Alex Bachman, who had 7 catches for $171, back-to-back plays for 49 yards on the first one, and then all the way down to the 1-yard line on the next one for about an 18-yard catch. And then Newman kept it for the touchdown for the what would prove to be the game winner with 34 seconds left, a 75-yard drive in 41 seconds, and Wake took the lead 37-34. It looked like they won the game, the way their defense was playing. But Memphis came right back. Joey Magnifico had a big 44-yard catch. They left him alone. Then he broke tackles. He got it down to the Wake 17. It looked like it was going to at least be overtime, down to the 17-yard line. Plenty of time left to take some shots at the end zone. They ran the ball the next play, which was a bit odd. And they were not able to convert. So Wake stood up on defense after giving up the one busted coverage play. And Riley Patterson, the poor Memphis kicker, I felt bad for this guy. So he comes out with 3 seconds left on the clock, losing 37-34. And from 38 yards out, hits the field goal. But, of course, timeout was called by Wake. Goes out again, hits the next field goal. Of course, Wake was able to use their final timeout. And then finally, on that play, there was a false start by the offensive line. They moved it back 5 yards to make it a 43-yard try. And on the third try, after going dead center for 2 consecutive field goals, Riley Patterson from 43 pushed it right. It might have been good from 38. The false start might have cost them there. Wake wins over Memphis 37-34. I believe that's been the best bowl game we've seen. It went down right to the wire. It was a well-played game. A good combination for me, the offense and the defense. I don't like to see all offense, 58-55. That's boring. I like to see good, hard-hitting defensive play, tight coverage. So this had spectacular plays in the passing game, running game, had special teams plays, everything you could want in a football game for the most part. Wake wins to move to 7-6 on the season. And again, a 3rd consecutive bowl win for Wake. They defeated Texas A&M last year. They beat Temple 2 years ago. All right, what's coming back for Wake this year? Well, you've got Newman, the quarterback. He's going to be a sophomore next year. Threw 9 touchdowns with 4 interceptions. And, of course, the job is not necessarily his. He will battle Hartman, the two guys that had to be pushed into duty for the first 3 games of the season when Kendall Hinton, who was the supposed starter, was suspended for the first 3 games, and it ended up costing him his job as these guys had to take over. Hartman first against Notre Dame in Game 4, and then Newman later because of injury. So it's Newman versus Hartman as sophomores next year at Wake. Matt Colburn, one of the most productive players in recent Wake history at running back, is gone. He piled up over 2,500 yards rushing in his career and 15 touchdowns. Cade Carney is back after rushing for just over 1,000 yards. He got to 1,000 yards with 51 in the bowl game in his junior season. So Carney's back. Bachman's gone after catching 6 touchdowns and 37 receptions this year. Scotty Washington, my guy, is going to be back as a junior after catching 20 this year, 45 last year. And then, let's see, on defense, you got a couple big players in Cameron Glenn. Did you see this kid play from his safety position and support the run? He's a hitter, but he's gone after piling up 98 total tackles this year. Willie Yarberry, 11 total, 11 tackles for loss and 5.5 sacks. He's gone. 2 big playmakers on defense are back for Wake in Justin Sternad, 105 total tackles for him, and Carlos Bachman, who, Carlos, I can't read my own writing, but I've seen this kid play for the last few years. Carlos Bashan with 11 tackles for loss and 4.5 sacks. All right, we want to run down the Wake non-conference and conference schedule, both for 2019. A tricky game against Utah State at home, followed by a trip to Rice. They've got Elon, and they've got I don't know if you picked up on this a couple of years ago, Wake and North Carolina agreed to play a non-conference game. So it's a ACC matchup, but it counts as a non-conference game because it's scheduled outside of the regular conference schedule. You may think that's stupid. I don't really care. Initially, I thought it was idiotic, but whatever. Wake and North Carolina play a non-conference game. Of course, in the ACC, much like the SEC, you play everyone in your division, and you play only 2 teams in the other 7-team division, and one of them is set. So Wake's rival that they play every year in the other division is Duke. That was the win, 59-7, that allowed them to get to postseason play this year. They, of course, play Duke next year at home, and their other games against Virginia Tech on the road. For Memphis, Brady White's back after throwing 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions this year. He will be back as a redshirt senior. You've got, of course, Darrell Henderson declaring for the NFL draft. He's gone. Patrick Taylor, though, will come into his senior season after gaining 1,122 yards. Yes, Memphis had a 1,900-yard back and an 1,100-yard back. Taylor also scored 18 touchdowns, 16 rushing, 2 receiving. Tony Pollard's back as a redshirt sophomore. He had over 550 yards rushing and 39 catches. DeMonte Coxey, we talked about him and the spectacular catch that he had. He's back as just a junior in 2019 after catching 74 balls for over 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. You've got John Williams back for his senior season with 33 catches. And Joey Magnifico, love the name, 21 catches and 5 touchdowns and a couple big plays in this game. On defense, Curtis Akins is gone. He had 100 tackles for Memphis this year. He's the significant loss. Otherwise, most of the production is back in Austin Hall, who will be a senior, 63 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss. Bryce Huff will be a senior with unless he declares for the NFL draft, and that's a possibility, after a 19 tackle for loss season and 9.5 sacks for Bryce Huff. That's possible. Jonathan Wilson as well. We mentioned him getting banged up in this game, but he comes back as a senior, we would expect, after a 6-sack season. And Terrell Carter, the best defensive back for the Memphis Tigers, 68 tackles and 2 interceptions. The 2019 schedule for Memphis is not daunting out of conference. They've got Ole Miss at home in the Liberty Bowl. Then they've got Southern, South Alabama on the road, and Louisiana Monroe on the road. There's no UCF on the schedule. They do open in conference play against Houston on the road. Then they've got Cincinnati at home. So two of the tougher teams in American Conference play right out of the gate in conference scheduling for Memphis. Our thoughts on the Memphis Tigers and the Wake Forest Demon Deacons after taking in the Birmingham Bowl. Would love to hear what you have to say about anything concerning college football, of course, right here at the place for college football discussion, debate, and analysis. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.